Yes. Question is much better put to the bill's sponsor. Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. I know this is
my apologies.
Not at all. We understand this is certainly a very interesting, if not hectic, day for those of you in the House.
Interesting qualifies it.
And with my colleagues' permission, we'll recommence the speakers list after. And we'll invite Mr. Carmichael to make a presentation, and in that regard we will go with the original speakers list, and I will immediately invite Mr. Carmichael to make a presentation.
Well, Senator, thank you, and honorable senators, I appreciate your invitation today and the opportunity to present this bill before you. It's an honor to appear before your committee and present to you my private member's bill C-288, an act respecting the national flag of Canada. As some of you may know, I was inspired to present this legislation at the notice of my constituents. They reported a series of stories of restrictive housing regulation and strata boards which have prohibited them from flying our national flag. Many of you have heard me recount stories of Canadians including Brian and Linda Cassidy and Mark Murray, all upstanding citizens who have been penalized with harsh strata regulations, barring them from flying the Canadian flag. Bill C-288 serves to enshrine all citizens' right to fly our flag, a right that many have assumed was theirs, but until this legislation is finalized, has been amiss from our Constitution. Today I'll speak to the core of what our flag represents to me as a Canadian, and to that of the many constituents who have written into my office. Overarching have been common themes and an understanding of the immense significance of our flag. As I have said before, the flag's beauty and simplicity is very much what Canadians pride themselves in. It is understated yet bold, and it is in its composite of red and white represents the steadfast ideals on which Canada was formed. Freedom to some individuals around the world. This word is a call to action and to arms. It serves as a cry and an ideal for which they strive, but to which they continue to shed blood. This noun is an elusive ideal for which they have not achieved. Our flag is a powerful reminder that for not only all of us in this room, but for the individuals from coast to coast to coast, freedom is a luxury that we exercise. From freedom to worship our own God, to the freedom to speak and voice thoughts and opinions on any number of mediums ranging from the internet to the airwaves to print. As parliamentarians, we are witness to the freedom of speech and seeing an array of views presented by constituents and by colleagues. Our flag, which crowns our House of Commons, is a powerful reminder of Canadians' right to exercise that freedom. With freedom, the Canadian flag also serves to represent our democracy. Even the very history of how the flag was formed, a national campaign wherein proposals from citizens across Canada were considered, embodies a core idea on which Canada stands, that of considering the views of many and doing our best to represent them. On February 15, 1965, when our flag was first raised, the Honourable Maurice Bourget stated that, quote, "The flag is the symbol of our nation's unity, for it, beyond any doubt, represents all the citizens of Canada without distinction of race, language, belief, or opinion," end of quote. These words are a testament to Canada's incredible multiculturalism in action, not simply in name. Canada is an ongoing leader in its ability to nurture a cultural mosaic so diverse and so vibrant. In my own riding of Don Valley West, I am proud to have a multitude of ethnicities and cultures represented ranging from third-generation Jewish and Irish families to the first-generation families from India, Pakistan, South Korea, and China, to name a few. It is an incredibly diverse riding, and I am consistently reminded at citizenship ceremonies of the impact of our Canadian flag. To individuals who have come from afar, from places where freedom and democracy are absent, the Canadian flag represents all they overcame to come here, often by way of tales that would even stretch the mind of Hollywood directors. I've seen with the immense pride in the faces of first-generation immigrants at these ceremonies, while individuals affirm their newly minted Canadian status and proudly wave their Canadian flag. I'm again reminded of all that our flag represents. Of the many stories I have heard from across Canada of individuals who have been barred from flying the flag or been penalized, I have been most dismayed to hear that our veterans have been reprimanded and some even fined for flying their flag. Of all citizens, our veterans know and understand all that our flag represents, and to bar them from flying our flag seems unjust at least. I was moved by one piece of correspondence in particular from an individual named Pierre Tassé. His email is as follows, quote, "I am writing this email to show my support for the National Flag of Canada Act. As the son of a decorated World War II bomber pilot and the father of a serving member of our armed forces who was wounded while serving as a UN peacekeeper, I most strongly feel that flying the Canadian flag shows loyalty to the country." End of quote. This letter evidences the support from not only our veterans, but the families and legacies, both past and present, of those who have served in our military. Our Canadian flag and its embodiment of our core Canadian ideals is a universal symbol. I saw this during my work when I served for 6 years on the Canadian Olympic Committee and 14 years as the leader of Rowing Canada. It was truly incredible to see our athletes, those who have dedicated their lives to perfecting their skill in their sport, knowing that 100th of a second could be the difference between them and a podium finish. Having attended numerous World Championships and Summer Olympic Games, it is always a beautiful sight to see our athletes stand tall on these podiums as our maple leaf was raised. I don't know about you, but I have been watching the events leading up to the London Games with tremendous interest. I look forward to seeing our flag raised for all the world and the spectators to again be reminded of these ideals for which our veterans fought and on which our country was formed. My office has received countless emails and letters of support for this legislation from coast to coast to coast. As Jeff Bear, a resident from Don Valley West, simply put it, quote, "This kind of bill that protects the symbols of Canada and what we have in Canada are very important to me," end of quote. His email was concise and clear and echoes my sentiments of the significance of the flag and Bill C-288. I will note that the legislation has taken on different iterations in its lifetime. As it stands before us today, it serves as a facilitative piece of legislation to encourage and enable citizens to demonstrate their pride for this incredible country of ours by flying the flag. I would also like to give special thanks to co-sponsors in the Senate, Senator Wallen, Senators Jaffer and Senator Mahovlich, who have also been kind in their support of this legislation. While not all parties have supported this bill, I would like to thank those members from across the floor who have left blind partisanship at the door and together have seen incredible symbolism of our flag. There is a common, undeniable understanding of the deep meaning and significance that the Canadian flag has for all of us. I thank you for taking time to listen to my brief review of this legislation and this story, and I'm happy to answer your questions and hopefully pass my private member's bill. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. I now open the floor, starting with Senator Eggleton, to be followed by Senator Dick, to be followed by Senator Bernier.
Well, thank you, Mr. Carmichael. I hope you're as energetic 24 hours from now as you are at the moment.
Senator.
I share your respect and love for our flag. I happen to have been on the Hill on February the 15th, 1965, young guy at the time when that momentous flag raising occurred. I want to ask you, though, how this will really work, because the main operative word here is encourage. So it doesn't force anybody to do anything. And, you know, there's a lot of condominiums in Toronto and in your constituency, and I live in one, and in Toronto as well. And, of course, all of these condominiums have laws and regulations. You can't put things on the door, anything that goes on the outside of the particular unit, and that would include balconies or windows, I guess. So how is it possible for you to get that changed? I take it, by the way, if I could just back up a moment, that all of these concerns that were raised by constituents are people in multiple residential buildings. They're in apartments or condominiums.
Predominantly, but some in ratepayers association groups or strata housing where you have a common governance model that can dictate the appearance of buildings.
Okay, so these condominium corporations or building owners or whatever can't be forced; they could be encouraged. But so how do you see this bill being of effect to accomplish what you want to accomplish?
Well, thank you, Senator, and the question is, I think, fundamental to the bill itself. Clearly, when we began this, we had a number of enforcement elements in the bill that were just untenable. I don't think it's possible, literally, to legislate one's pride for the country. So I clearly. What we tried to do through discussion and I should say tremendous support from the Liberal Party particularly, we wanted to find a way that we could put this on the books as a piece of legislation using the word encourage so that we're not truly legislating, but we're setting a standard that's different than the one that was there before, which was nothing at all. So although this bill has an aspirational tone to it, as an encouragement to Canadians, it's one that says every Canadian truly does have the right to fly the flag. And with the establishment of this legislation, that becomes the law of the land. Now, while it's only an encouragement, previously there was nothing at all to, in fact, set a standard. And so to that end, that was the goal of finalizing the bill as we did. The issue with regards to certainly rental buildings and condominium buildings, that's where the biggest pushback has been in terms of the discussion we've had in consultation with constituents, certainly in my riding, but I've heard from lots across the country. The issue is to encourage them to have a dialogue with their residents. Right now, by law, you can fly a flag on Canada Day and on February 15th, Flag Day. Those are the only 2 days where it's truly legislated. I heard from constituents across the country, from Canadians who had family members overseas representing our forces, representing our country under the flag, whether they were in Afghanistan or in a peacekeeping mission somewhere else in the world. And they wanted to put the flag up as a remembrance for a family member while they were overseas. That to me was something that made a lot of sense. But I had stories of people being put in bad standing by condominium boards, people that were on boards of directors at condo boards or ratepayers association that were being thrown off those boards, which to me seemed un-Canadian. It seemed unjust. It wasn't right. And so by doing this, at least in creating a piece of legislation where we encourage all Canadians to have that right, there'll be a dialogue. And like anything, you hope that with a dialogue, you'll arrive at common sense.
Are you?
Can I?
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I've got to. I want to remind my colleagues we started a little late. So can you focus your questions? And we have another bill to do this afternoon as well. So
yeah, just put the hammer down, Senator.
Yeah,
if I talk too long,
well, I think you gave a good summary there, and perhaps the next ones could be a little more efficient.
It will be. Yeah.
In that regard, Senator Dick, please.
Mr. Chair, and basically my question was the same as why did we need an act to encourage? And in your statement, you were talking about people being barred from flying the Canadian flag, and I think you said that every Canadian has the right to fly the Canadian flag.
Should have.
Should have. But when you read through the bill, there's nothing in there that actually says that. Do you think it's in the preamble? Maybe that it doesn't actually say it. It talks about it more in the abstract as to what the flag means, as opposed to that every Canadian should have the right to display their flag. Then you're actually targeting the issue, I think, that is key to it.
Senator, I don't disagree with you, but as we ran through the process of establishing this bill, the wordsmithing became very important to those that were prepared to work through establishing the bill. And so to me it was more important to put the bill on the books, to establish the right for Canadians and encourage the dialogue. And so we came to agreement with our colleagues on the other side, and that's how we got there. But I wouldn't argue with you on that.
Yes. I'm not sure that you captured that idea within the bill itself, though. And
okay.
That'll be my final comment.
Thank you.
Senator Vernier, to be followed by Senator Merchant, to be followed by Senator Callback.
Bonjour, je suis sénatrice.
Good morning, I'm Senator Vermeer from Quebec. I will speak to you in French.
D'abord, d'entrée de jeu, je dirais que d'avoir retiré.
First of all, having withdrawn any pecuniary or sanctions here, or criminal sanctions at all, was a very good thing, very healthy point of view. This would avoid many problems, particularly in Quebec, perhaps. However, I'd like to discuss jurisdictional issues, perhaps. Co-ownership, condominium boards, cooperative structures of ownership, all this is a matter of civil law, and it's a provincial jurisdiction. It's true that the federal parliament has the authority and the responsibility to legislate on our national symbols, the national flag being one of them, and that if they want to establish rules and regulations on flying the maple leaf, they're free to do so. How is your bill going to avoid, for example, if we take Quebec, that this becomes a battle of the flags before the courts, as it were, given that multi-residential buildings, condominium ownership is it's provincial. It's clearly provincial property law. We could find someone saying, no, that doesn't apply to me, or a co-owner or an association could say, this is a civil law matter. It's not a matter of federal legislation.
Senator, thank you for your question. I apologize for my lack of French, so I will answer in English. That question actually was well discussed at a number of caucuses, particularly Quebec caucus, in our case, on the Conservative side, and was an area of concern. So a couple of things. Number one, this is not intended to be something that would get into a war of flags. It's strictly Canada's national symbol, and by actually softening the words to the encouragement, taking the penalties out, I really believe that we took the edge off any potential contention that might exist between jurisdictions. And clearly, by stressing that it is an encouragement, by taking, let's take it in the provincial jurisdiction of Quebec, not every resident of Quebec will want to fly the Canadian flag, and that's their privilege. But for those who do, there should be a way that they can enter into a dialogue and have the opportunity to at least try and find their place in representing that that point of view. And so clearly, when we softened the bill to what you see before you today, I felt that it took the contention or the edge off that type of debate that would give it something that was a lot more realistic and something that people could live with in whatever jurisdiction.
Okay. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Merci. Senator Merchant.
Thank you very much. I wonder, are you able to provide us with some of the research that you have done in the way that this sort of legislation may have been introduced in another country? I'm thinking that about 20 or 25 years ago, this kind of thing was introduced, I believe, in the United States. And there was a lot of controversy. There were some legal battles over it. I know that there were court cases. And I'm just wondering, have you thought about the constitutionality of this kind of legislation?
Thank you, Senator. And question is a good one. Let me stress, first of all, I am purely Canadian, and so from the one of our discussions early on in debate was that this was a bill that had its genesis elsewhere. That it absolutely did not. This is a Canadian, made in Canada solution, and one that actually, I think, by representing itself as more aspirational in nature, one would say that it is purely Canadian. I don't have the detail, though, to your question with regards to what legal precedents or what legal issues jumped up in the United States when they did that. But I'd be happy to, if that was something that that this committee wanted, I'd be happy to go and do some work on that. This bill, the genesis of this bill was literally from hundreds of Canadians writing to me, and it began last summer, began in July a year ago, and it was one that took a number of months to consolidate it, and quite frankly, it was one that came to me more as a surprise than anything else, just by the interest from people who knew where I was, where my first love was, and started writing to me within my riding, and then I went outside and did my homework elsewhere within the country and found great support for it. But I'm not answering your question.
Well, I think actually, Mr. Carmichael, you pointed out earlier that this is an aspirational bill,
yes,
and not one with legal consequences, which distinguishes it from the situation that was referred to. So it can't enter into a constitutional or legal battle because there is not a law to be violated, in a sense. It's the aspirational side, yes, which you have emphasized. So I hope the Senator has overall got some sense of where you are
Thank
on
you,
this.
Senator.
Senator Merchant? Thank you. Senator Callback to be followed by Senator Seth, to be followed by Senator Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Certainly, I agree with what you say about the significance of the flag. Now, when I read the summary of this legislation, the purpose of this enactment is to ensure that all Canadians are encouraged to display the national flag of Canada. So, how is this legislation going to encourage Canadians to display the national flag of Canada?
Well, Senator, first of all, the assumption by hundreds and hundreds of Canadians that I've talked to, and in fact even on phone-in radio shows, is that we have that right to fly the flag anytime we want to. And clearly, for those that I have documented in some of my work and preparation for this bill, that isn't the case. There is no protection rule or of law or any other support for a Canadian who wants to fly the flag outside of those 2 days a year that I mentioned earlier. So, from my understanding of the presentation of this legislation, or this piece of legislation, this actually creates precedents where it is now on the books, part of our Constitution, part of our right as a Canadian to in fact have that privilege.
But you say there's no protection for Canadians to fly the flag either than July the 1st or February the 15th. I guess I'm trying to figure out how this legislation gives them some protection.
Well, in fact, there is no protection. It just gives them the right. If you're in a condominium building, and that board rules against you, that board trumps your right. But what I'm hoping that this will do, at its outset, is at least create a dialogue where people will be more reasonable. And I'm thinking of veterans who have paid a heavier price, who wanted that privilege but didn't have the right to do it in the past.
So how do you talk about encouraging the dialogue? And I mean, I think it's a great idea. But how do you see this unfolding?
I think that anybody who is challenged with either wanting to fly their flag or being told they couldn't will now be able to refer to a piece of legislation that says that they are encouraged to fly the flag, and it is part of their right within the country to do that. Granted, there are no penalties, so I'm not naive enough to expect that there's a hammer somewhere that's going to fall on somebody who blocks somebody from flying it, and that clearly is where we intended to finish with this bill.
Okay.
Thank you. Senator Seth.
Thank you, Chair. My question was just, I certainly really agree with you that this is our flag is our national pride, and we are very proud, and it should be treated very well and respected very well. There just was something very curious in my mind. What would be the consequences of those who violate this law, who do not follow? Is anything, or?
In terms, Senator, do you mean in terms of destroying the flag, or?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The question is specifically, is there any consequence to those who do not, in the end, agree to allow the flag to be flown under this? And I think you made
Clearly
the answer.
not.
Does it
Clearly
any punishment,
Clearly
anything
not.
else?
No.
So nothing has been said. Just we are suggesting we should follow and respect our flag.
It's
more.
strictly an encouragement that people will come to agreement on it, but no, there's no
Okay.
there's no consequence.
That's very good. Thank you.
Senator Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, Senator.
Your bill provides that those that control multi-unit buildings would be encouraged to allow the display of the flag in accordance with flag protocol. And I'm just trying to get a little better sense of what that means. What does it? What additional rights would those that are in these multi-unit buildings have? As you point out, Canadians today have the right to fly the flag twice a year. So is that, and I assume that would be expanded by broadening it to this reference to flag protocol. So there may be a lot of details, and I'm not expecting you to give all of those, but just in a sense, what does this reference to flag protocol open it up to? Are there certain other days? Are there hours of each day that the flag could be flown that otherwise wouldn't? What does that mean? What does it open it up to?
Well, Senator, thank you for the question, and I have a colleague from Heritage Canada here with me who can address particularly the issues around the actual protocol. But the question with regards to time of day issues along that line, nothing like that exists that I'm aware of to dictate the time you can fly the flag or otherwise. It's more from the perspective of how a flag should be hung in according to appropriate protocol. And Joel, are you able to answer?
I can certainly add. There is nothing to dictate the hours that a flag should be flown. It can be flown 24 hours a day.
Okay.
There are some exceptions while at sea, but that does not apply in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always thought flags weren't to be flown at night, but maybe that wasn't part of protocol. But anyway, that's not a particularly big issue. But in terms of the number of days, for example, would this encourage owners of these multi-unit buildings to allow the flag to be flown 24 hours a day, 365 days a year? Would the protocol say that that's acceptable?
I would say it would be acceptable if there was agreement with the building owners and the board of directors, or however it's governed.
Sure.
To me, the protocol issue relates more to flying the flag in a way that is disrespectful,
not disrespectful,
to the country or to the flag. So if it's upside down or however you might consider it inappropriate, my perspective on agreement, incidentally, in a building is that obviously flags can be hung from balconies and all sorts of things that might look untoward, and people might agree that this should be on the back wall of a balcony and agree for the number of days and find ways to get to a place where it's appropriate.
In the work that you did, were there any that approached you that were single-family owners? And for example, there's restrictions, as you point out, through condominium and apartment buildings can have restrictions, but similarly for single-family properties, there are municipal zoning requirements, and I'm just wondering if that happened to come up in your study that single-family owners found they may have been unduly restricted by, and as Senator Verner points out, that's a provincial jurisdiction, of course, but I'm just wondering, was that ever raised as an issue by any of your constituents?
I'm just looking for the name of a couple who did. They're in my presentation here. I apologize.
General.
Yeah, the general
sense.
theme is that they have for 40 years flown flags at a number of their different homes. They moved into an area that was governed by a ratepayers association and agreed to a set of architectural dynamics that were to be in place for all homes. And when they put a pole up on their garage, it stretched on a angular way up and hung over their driveway, it was determined that that did not meet the appropriate architectural guidelines. And in fact, they were fined and they were kicked off the ratepayers board. That to me was a shame. And in fact, they, in their story, had been 40 years having a flag at every home they'd owned without consequence.
Right.
So that was the only one of that nature, though.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. I think you've given us I have one question to put to you for clarification, but I think you've given us a very good sense of what you're intending here. It's an aspirational bill. It's something out there that will at least give people, Canadians, the opportunity to dialogue on this issue, to hopefully open up a constructive dialogue, and I think you've been very pragmatic in terms of recognition that there are, in fact, probably some real limitations that should occur where flags should fly, but yet the dialogue should be open to some reasonable accommodation if that's at all possible. The specific question that arises, you've mentioned a couple of times that Canadians have the right to fly the flag on Canada Day and on February the 15th, Flag Day. How significant a right is that? Is that an absolute right, or are there limitations on that as well?
Senator, I'm not sure that I can give you the absolute limitations on that.
Oh,
I don't know that answer.
It's just one that arose because you mentioned those 2 days in particular, and just wondered whether there was any extent there, and that is fine. Colleagues, are you ready to move to clause by clause on this bill? Is that agreed? Thank you. You're welcome to stay if you.
Both clauses?
Well, I mean, I don't want to prejudge how the committee will be handling these, so you better stay there in case you have to answer clarifications. Okay, colleagues, I'm going to proceed through. Shall the title stand postponed?
Agreed.
That's agreed. Shall the preamble stand postponed?
Agreed.
That's agreed. Shall clause 1 stand postponed?
Agreed.
That's carried. That's agreed.
Agreed, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, that's agreed.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, now, shall clause 2 carry?
Agreed.
It's carried. Shall clause 1 carry? Carried. Shall the preamble carry? Carried. Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried. Does the committee wish to consider pending observations to the report to Senate? No? Thank you very much. Is it agreed that I report this bill to the Senate?
Agreed.
That's agreed. Thank you all very much. And thank you, Mr. Carmichael, and congratulations to you for this. We have one more step in this road, but we will be reporting as you've just heard. And Mr. Giroir, thank you very much for being here today and the clarity of your answers in the first part of this. Thank you so much for being here. To my colleagues, thank you. And I hereby suspend this meeting to prepare immediately for the second round.